Forgive me, brothers and sisters. I'm struggling a little bit today. Got a bad sore throat, some sinus infection going on. Wipe these glasses off real quick. So I'm Pike. I'm an Orthodox Christian living in my log cabin on the banks of the Anchor River. No family up here. I've been living up here for a long, long time. A few decades now. I've been all over Alaska. I fished all the way off the coast of Russia and actually in Russian waters for some time. Fished up and down the whole Aleutian Island chain. Have rolled over at sea, been nearly dragged off the deck of a crab boat, tangled in the line after the pot got knocked off the pot launcher. In 25-foot waves. Plus, I've lived on the Aleutian Islands, lived on Unimak Island. It's been a really rough life, but a beautiful life up here. I've made an awful lot of good friends and lost an awful lot of good friends. I was looking through some of the places that I used to work, and a lot of them don't exist anymore. Stewart Fisheries, I was what was known as a chink man. Pardon the derogatory name, but that's actually what it was called. I was a chink man for 6 years. And that's the man that works on the iron butcher machinery. The iron butcher machine is a massively intricate piece of machinery. You had to be an expert machinist in order to keep these running. I worked on a Model G iron chink and a Model K iron chink. Actually, 2 Model Ks. It's a machine that has an indexing table where a couple people side by side take turns placing a salmon in a specific way, and 3 belts, 3 chains that have lugs on them that push the fish forward, grab the fish, and then it goes something through what's pretty much like a guillotine, a header knife that spins around like this, and it's shaped like a bat's wing, and it cuts perfectly behind the fish's head and around the gill. And it removes the heads, and the heads slide off down the trough into the gutter system, into a tote, and then they're disposed of and ground up. So you fall into a gutter system that has water flowing through it that pushes them down into a chopper pump. And then it goes, after that, into an extractor, which is a series of banana-shaped aluminum arms that are timed to be right in front of the lugs. And as the fish pushes through, it pushes the fish eggs out into another vacuum pump that sucks the fish eggs through a tube, and they go over to the Akira and Sujiko room, where the Japanese Akira and Sujiko techs who do the caviar go through the eggs and do everything they need to make Sujiko and Akira, 2 different forms of Japanese salmon roe caviar. And all these people were imported from Japan every summer. And they work the summers, they work long hours, sometimes 18 hours a day or more. They always had colorful Japanese rain gear on. They had the most epic rain gear. Some of them had rabbits and coffee cups and flowers and everything else printed on their rain gear. They were quite flamboyant. And almost none of them knew how to speak any English. We had a Korean lady named Song who worked with the Japanese caviar techs, and a Sumatran man named Susana that also worked with the caviar techs. But after the eggs were pushed out of the fish, then they went into this great big bow wheel where these 3 pinchers were timed after the fish dropped into a tray. And they'd grab the fish and flip it down. And there was several saws, 2 saws sideways that cut the pectoral fins off, and another saw that cut the anal fin off, another saw that split the fish, and high pressure sprayers aimed that would brush it off. And all these saws ran on double 35 chains, and all these bushings had to be just so, the chains had to be just so, and you had to retention everything constantly and retime everything and watch it and make sure it stayed in time, or else just mayhem would happen. But I did a lot of years of that, and that was how salmon got canned. And after the fish was headed, gutted, had all the fins chopped off and split down the middle, and the bloodline was cleaned out, then it'd go on to a couple turntables full of people that took care of cutting off with knives any missed fins or anything else that needed to be done. And then they go into a big hopper through a conveyor belt, and then the people running the canning seamer line would feed the fish in the right amount into the lines, and then several knives would cut the salmon into chunks, and then they'd get put into cans with a couple tablets of salt and run through the seamer, and then stacked in retort carts and pushed into giant long pressure cooker tubes that were called retorts. And it was a very strict cooking process. Had to get up to a certain pressure, certain temperature for a duration. And I did that for years. That was my job. I'd show up the beginning of April, sometimes the beginning of March, and live in my little camper by myself in the freezing cold. Remember one of the winters I had to climb into my camper through the sunroof because that was the only way I could get in and out. And I kept maybe 10 sleeping bags beneath me and 15 above me and slept in there after work. Yeah, I ate a lot of canned salmon there. It was really good stuff. We really kept everything clean. Everybody worked really hard. And those days are kind of disappeared. The iron shink machine was made in the 1800s, and it went through several iterations of how it was powered. It used to be powered by a coal-fired steam donkey that would spin shafts across the top of the ceiling that would spin, and as people turned machines on or off, there was a big leather belt that would slip over the top of the line shafting in the ceiling of the factory, and that would go around the flywheel on the machine, and that's how it was powered. Then later on, they used an electric motor, and then after the electric motor, they found it was more efficient to use hydraulics. So they used hydraulics over electric, or electric over hydraulic rather, and powered them that way. And that's just one of the things that I used to do that is disappearing so fast. There's hardly any canneries left in Alaska. They used to be all over the place. And if you see some of the histories of them, you see towns that used to exist that no longer exist. Kasilof used to can salmon into 5-pound square cans and ship them on wooden sailing vessels all the way down to Seattle. It's pretty amazing. There's a few cabins in Kasilof still that the siding is made from cut pieces of the tin cans. The whole outside of the building is cut salmon cans for the siding. And it used to be so easy to save all your money because you worked at the cannery. There was a cookhouse. So you'd have breakfast, and then you'd show up, do your shift, have lunch, eat lunch, go back on shift, work till dinner, eat dinner in the cookhouse, and then work the rest of your shift till midnight. And if you stayed and were on the cleanup crew, to clean up the plant spotless every night like we did. We had to clean everything off, and then after that, we'd oil the machines by spraying white oil, a food-grade oil, on all the metal surfaces so it didn't rust. And then you'd get another sandwich that was made in the cookhouse, just wrapped up in saran wrap, usually a turkey sandwich with cheese and a piece of French bread. And that was your reward for staying an extra hour and a half to be on the cleanup crew. It was overtime after 8 hours, and even though we were paid such a small wage, it added up when you counted up all the overtime. I think when I started there, it was something like $7.25 an hour. Nothing like what people expect today. And we worked hard. I'd be so tired when I walk out of that plant at night. I'd ask people, is it foggy outside? It looks foggy, because it was like a thick, heavy pea fog rolled in, and I couldn't hardly see to make it to the showers. And I'd take a shower, usually have to wait in line. We only had a few showers. Everyone would be getting in the showers. And the first year that we got students, J1 students that come from Czech Republic and Slovakia, apparently it was normal in their country that the women, after they showered, would come out topless out of the showers. And once the camp security, the cannery security realized that there was a bunch of hungry American men just hanging out for no good reason next to the showers, waiting for a show, they put an end to that and told them that it wasn't acceptable in America for the women to walk around topless, wearing just a towel to go back to their tents to go to sleep at night. It was a really interesting time in Alaska that I caught the tail end of. I worked out on all the Aleutian Islands. At one point or another, would come into port and have to get supplies and work on a ship. Or we'd just be tendering and go from the Nushagak River in Dillingham. And I'd tender out there for a summer, or I'd go crab fishing or long lining, and then back to the cannery after that. So it was a really hard life. And I used to drink like a fish. I remember one night I drank like 67 tequila drinks. And just ironically, that's how many that I drank. And then I was going to walk home sometime at 3 in the morning, 2 or 3 in the morning. And I ended up waking up on the side of a stream 5 miles out into the mountains, face down, laying in the rocks with a massive hangover, completely alcohol sick. And when I woke up, I had no idea where I was. All I saw when I looked up, when I started to lift my head up, was a mink swim out of the river with a small Dolly Varden trout in his mouth. And he looked at me, set the trout down, squeaked a couple times, picked it back up and ran away. And I slowly lifted myself out of the rocks and looked around and realized that the stream was flowing toward the ocean. So I must have to go the other way if I was going to find my way back to the highway again. I don't know how I wasn't eaten by a bear, because there's really big brown bears all over there. Excuse me. Really big brown bears all over that place. It was Salmon Creek in Seward. But amazing that I survived that, plus so many other things. We rolled all the way over long lining by St. Matthews. It's all the way past the end of the Aleutian Islands. The boat rolled completely over. Everything went dark. We were sitting and eating dinner in the galley. But amazingly enough, I think we had enough cod in the bottom of the boat that it helped right it back up again before we sank. and then almost getting the line washed into my feet when we were crab fishing for snow crab. It dragged me all the way to the back of the deck and almost over. My friend Tom and our deck boss Jim grabbed me under my arms and held me while Tom frantically got the rope from around my legs and saved my life right before I was about ready to go over the stern of the ship and 600 feet down with the crab pot. The Lord got me through all that. And I was still just a train wreck. The women that I ran around with were pretty rough, and I was pretty rough. So I never ended up settling down and having a family, especially considering I had left Michigan to come up here after high school because my life became an absolute train wreck. After losing the woman that I thought I'd marry, that it was my high school girlfriend, all through high school, we broke up. She broke up with me because she said things weren't going to work, and I can't blame her because I was a train wreck. I was hanging around the wrong crowds. I was always getting in fights, hanging around gangbangers and all of that. But Alaska slowly changed me. I'm so grateful for this place. Sometimes you just have to get away from all your friends or all the people that you think are your friends. And you have to find some silence. Keep seeing people on Facebook saying that they're depressed and they're broken and they don't know if they can make it. And I don't know how many times I felt that. I don't know how many times I was walking right on the razor's edge. But God got me through. And I know He's still there for me. And I know He's there for all of you and all of us. As hard as things seem sometimes, there were some hard times. It's one time when I was on Dutch Harbor and I got fired from one boat and was going to jump on another boat. And on the dock, I jumped off the boat and slipped on some jellyfish and hyperextended all 10 fingers on my, 8 fingers. I didn't hyperextend my thumbs, but all 8 fingers. Hyperextended them and they swole up and I wasn't able to work. And I had to use my last bit of money to escape Dutch Harbor. Cost like $1,500 at the time for a one-way ticket from Dutch Harbor to Anchorage. And I got another job after my hand healed up. Lived on unemployment for a while. Tried doing weather observer one winter out at the base of Black Peak and Mount Spur in a remote cabin 375 miles away from the nearest living human being. Totally inaccessible. Some of the most dangerous bear country on the planet Earth that I had to go through if I wanted to try to make it back to Anchorage, which is basically impossible. Tried that for a while. That went bad. The lodge owner didn't pay me. They didn't leave me with any food, and they only left me a shotgun that had number 8 birdshot because they were apparently worried that I'd shoot a bear to defend myself. So I couldn't do that either. I ended up using my last bit of money I had to get a float plane to come in to rescue me right as the lake was starting to freeze up. And we nearly crashed into the side of Black Peak because it's just a small round hole between the mountains and volcanoes that the plane has to land in a bay in. So as the plane takes off, immediately it has to bank hard and spiral up like a corkscrew to get out of there to be able to fly over the pass. God got me through that. I remember looking at that cliff as we got close, and the pilot was nervous. I thought that was going to be another time that I was going to die, and God got me through that. But every time that I thought that was it, God got me through it again, because obviously He wants us to keep going. He's got a purpose for all of us. And even if we don't realize it yet, there's something else coming down the road that He wants us to be a part of. Now I pray a lot, and I feel bad when I don't pray to God, when I realize I forgot to talk to Him today. And I ask Him to forgive me and say the Jesus prayer. God wants to give us good gifts, and so much of the things that we suffer in during our life, even though it doesn't seem like it at the time, we realize it was our own fault and that we did it to ourselves. It wasn't God doing it to us. It was our pride, our stubbornness, our arrogance. That's why we need to have humility, to realize that we're all wretched, to stop looking at our brothers and sisters. It's easy when you see someone on meth or heroin, especially on the side of the street, and you think to yourself, oh, look at that loser. Or someone that's homeless, why don't they get a job? We don't know what happened to them. We don't know what broke them, but we know who can heal them. And how many times have we walked past them, not even wanting to look at them, not wanting to offer them even the slightest word of encouragement? We have to realize that could be us. That could be us, or our brother, our sister, our mother, our father, our cousin, uncle. Everyone needs love. See so many broken creatures. Today I had to help tear apart a room where a man, he was embarrassed because he had some issues with incontinence, and the room was absolutely horrible. Actually, yesterday is when we started helping him move, and I noticed a huge antler from a moose on the floor. And I said, oh, I found an antler like that one time, almost that big, when I was snowshoeing. And he got really excited. He was so glad someone talked to him. He was a very large man, and I could tell he was depressed and struggling. And he started telling me how him and his family used to live out in the mountains, and they built their own log cabin by hand. They built their own stove. They cut and peeled the logs and did everything, made the shingles all by themselves, and they used to hunt moose north of Fairbanks. I was like, oh, I went up there looking for whitefish right before freeze up. And he's like, oh, you must have been pretty close to our homestead where you went. We lived in those mountains out there. So I let him tell me the story of all the stuff that he did to survive out in the bush with his family. And he told me about what his brothers did, and his father and his mother. Told me that his brother had died a few years ago. And I was so glad that I just started talking to him, that I found a way to get him to open up to me and to have some interaction. So I can't imagine how hard it is for him. There's other people that I work with. A lady that's having a really hard time. She's depressed a lot, some massive challenges. And seeing these people, and they can still be happy with all that they're struggling with, Some of these people can't even walk on their own. They can't even get up to go to the bathroom. And look at all the things that we complain about. Look at all the things that we worry about. That could have been us. All these people need someone to love them. And God's given us so much love that we can give out. God's given us a bank card, and the account that's connected to that bank card has an endless amount of love, an endless amount of humility, an endless amount of grace. And all these things we can give to anybody we want. It doesn't matter if they deserve it or not. It doesn't matter who they are or where they're from. It doesn't matter if they're transgendered. It doesn't matter if they're Muslim or Jewish. It doesn't matter if they're witches or Satanists. Because once they see Jesus being worked through us, seeing us doing what God wants us to do, what could turn them from those things quicker than that? What could make them want to know God more than seeing someone who has no reason to go out of their way to show them love, compassion, mercy, tenderness, humility? There's nothing that would make them want to come to know God than seeing God manifested through his people. Kind of hard for me to read tonight. I'm struggling with this cold. Making some chaga tea. And I love you all so much. Nobody's a mistake. We all have a reason and a purpose. Pray to God to deliver you from everything that you're struggling with. And know, from someone that's lived it, lived so much pain in my life, that God is real. He's there. He cares. You have angels watching over you, saints, the Mother of God. And if you just take one step toward God, he'll run to you and embrace you in his arms. I love you all, brothers and sisters, so much. I'll see if I can get my sinuses opened up so I can read. I don't know if I'll be back on again tonight or not. I love you all, and God bless.